I'd like to call this September 3rd, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Salee?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mrs. Hausen?
Here.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda is our district goals. We have 3 district goals: student achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. And certainly during this time of the pandemic, all 3 goals are challenged, but we will rise to the challenge and meet them. Next is public comment, and I do have one from Jessica Koza.
My name is Jessica Koza. I live at 9812 Hazelwood Avenue. So as you can see, I'm coming up here empty-handed, and I usually have a script in front of me, but this is a lot. I know that you guys are doing your best. I know that circumstances have led you to put us in remote learning, and I don't blame anybody for that. But we are week 1 down, and I have never in my life dealt with such chaos in my household. I'm so sorry for my tears, but if I don't show it, you're not going to know the strain that it has had. You all know that my son has special needs. No, they're not severe, but they're also not to be going unnoticed. He struggled really hard. He requires my 110% help on the computer. He's 8 years old. It's a lot to ask him how to share a Google Doc. It's a lot to ask him to write an email or to speak to a teacher or ask for help. On top of this, I have my 7-year-old, 2nd grade, who seems to be gliding with it just fine, so I don't want to give you a total negative. You know, Ruby does okay. I still have to help her on the classwork portion because, again, it's a lot for a 7-year-old to know how to do the share and how to email and do whatever. And then there's my 20-month-old monster who, you know, I'm neglecting him because I'm in another room with my other 2 children. It's a lot. I don't really quite understand why we couldn't compromise, at least for students like Jack, and I'm sure this falls on just typical peers, but at least at the elementary age. It is impossible, and it is not sustainable for them to continue on the computer like this. I think in small assignments, they could do it, but that's like, you know, typical homework time, which I can do. But I can't sit there for 6 hours a day teaching my kid how to log into 13 different Google Classrooms, which is a lot for an 8-year-old. And if you're asking why, I'm sure people want to know why. You have your basic teachers, and in 3rd grade, they're switching classes so that they have 3 different teachers. And then you have review links, and then you have the intervention links, and then there's the specials. And if you're not reading good, you're not going to see where to go. And I've designed visual schedules. I've tried to do everything I can to get him to do it, and it's just not sustainable. I guess what I'm asking, and I know I emailed you yesterday, Dr. Reiba, and I know you're probably like, why is she here? It's fine. I need you to see what agony this is doing. My eyes are bloodshot. I haven't slept. And I already feel a strain in my relationships, again, with my children that I had in the spring. It was a nice break in the summer when we weren't glued to a computer screen. But my eyes are shot. My fingers are shot. My son can't do the work without my help 100%. And I know that he doesn't require a full-time aide in school. So I guess what I'm asking you to do is you need to consider this when you're going forward in your plans if we're going to sustain this for another 9 weeks. I understand that COVID is serious. I take it very seriously. I'm immunocompromised. That's why I haven't been personally coming to board meetings. I watch everything online. But if I can learn to live with certain things and just take it easy, wear my mask, wash my hands, don't hug and kiss people, which is very hard for me to do. I'm Italian. I love everybody. I just don't understand why we can't start to move forward and live with this. There has to be something also with the Board of Health. Do they understand and do they know parents like me? There's more of us out there. Do they know what it's like for us to not only be a mother, but now we have to be a teacher, we have to be an intervention specialist, we have to be a speech therapist, an OT, a physical therapist, and all while trying to maintain our normal responsibilities. It's very hard, and it's gotta be harder for other people out there. And you talk about, we're all in this together. I kind of feel like we aren't. I made the comparison once before that we're all in the same water, but a lot of us are steering different types of boats. Others have yachts with all the bells and whistles to help them. Some of us have rowboats where we're literally doing all the work to get through and stay afloat. And I'm here to also speak on behalf of those other families. I've talked to other people. It's hard. We're all crying to each other every single day that we want this over and we want our kids to be healthy, happy, and safe. And we also want our teachers to feel happy, healthy, and safe. I could see it in their faces and I could hear it in their voice. I cried with a teacher on Monday. It's hard. Like, this isn't the way we should be doing school, especially at the elementary age. And I can't speak for the older grades because I don't have older kids. I don't want to overstep my boundary on that. But at least with the elementary school, there's got to be something that we could do. And, just think about those kids, and especially like kids like Jack and like Trent and like Charlotte and everybody else. Thank you.
So we normally take public comment to be a time to listen, but I do want to respond to your emotion and let you know that we all feel that. I won't say that I understand it, because I don't. My kids are older, but we do appreciate it, and I want to thank you for coming forward. I know it was hard, but we're all aware of those issues, and I think we're going to work through those issues, and we're going to discuss those issues and make sure we have a plan that's respectful to everyone. So next on our agenda is Treasurer's Report. George.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. One item for your consideration tonight, and it is for the annual OSBA, the Ohio School Boards Association Capital Conference Delegate appointments for their annual business meeting on October 29th. This year, the business meeting is going to be virtual, and on October 29th at 6:30 p.m. And what the delegate is they have OSBA has an annual business meeting as part of their bylaws, and if things are needed to be voted on, each school district gets one delegate to represent their school district and to be a voting member. Mr. Micko has been our delegate for the past several years, and I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add as to what the delegate does.
I think you encapsulated it pretty well. So we do need to nominate and vote on a delegate and an alternate. I have done it a number of the years in the past, and since it's virtual this year, I would like to do it again. So I will volunteer to do it. If anyone else wants to volunteer and fight me for it, now's your chance.
I nominate you.
Hearing none, we'll put myself as the delegate, and would anyone like to be the alternate?
I'll do it.
Seth has the short straw. Does anyone want to fight Seth for the alternate? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hausum, second by Mrs. Bissell. The delegate is myself. The alternate is Seth. Any discussion? Hearing none, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Ali,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
And the motion carries, and I know, speaking on behalf of Seth, we thank all of you for your support in this important position. Next up on our agenda is Superintendent's Report. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. Before I get into the restart plan, I'd just like to share I've shared it already with the board, but our school community that sadly, one of our Strongsville City Schools staff members, member of our district family, passed away yesterday afternoon. John Garzinski has been with our district for 7 or so years. He was a custodian at the old board office before going to center, and has been most recently at Whitney Elementary School. So our thoughts go out to John's family, his wife Jennifer, and his daughters Lauren and Emily. Sadly, John was 58 years old. In good health, and unexpectedly had a health issue that took him way too soon. I had the privilege of knowing John and working with John, and he was just, you know, the most caring, gentle, thoughtful man, cared about his work, cared about his family, and he will be greatly missed. So we ask that our entire community keeps John and his family in their thoughts during this difficult time. Transitioning to the item that's on the agenda, our restart plan, what I wanted to do tonight for the board and our community is talk about, we're now in 2 weeks of remote learning for the district, 2 weeks of full live instruction for our secondary students, 1 week of live instruction for our elementary students. So give an update on where we are with remote learning, talk about some things that we're doing and some grant we received to helping with connectivity and families that may have internet issues in their homes, and then talk about a recommendation on what I'm suggesting in terms of a timeline moving forward, and other solo and transportation and how that all relates. So this is the graphic we've showed a lot. I want to talk about remote learning 2.0. So Jess, I understand and empathize with the situation that your family's going through, your children are going through. And considering that, we have seen areas that we need to continue to focus on, and we have seen successes. So the overarching theme is that when we talk about Remote 2.0 is an enhancement to Remote 1.0, it has been, and our families have seen that, supported that, and praised the district for that. But again, it's not perfect. So some of these successes that we've had in these early weeks is we heard loud and clear we need one spot to go to. And even though we understand that there's sometimes a lot of links to maneuver, we also need to understand that this is in the first 4 days of the school year, and the first 4 days for our elementary students are hectic anyway, let alone being at home since March, and then learning how to maneuver on an online environment. But the idea that, you know, all of our teachers have a Google Classroom, it's the hub for everything, has been successful. We also heard that we wanted live instruction. And that is happening. We have live instruction and meets that are multiple times a week. Just to share some insight as the struggles we have when we look organizationally, we heard loud and clear from our community that we want more live instruction. We want it to be a semblance of school. What some families, especially at our primary or families with multiple young children, is they are concerned that it's too much, that it's a lot to handle, especially in the first week. So that's where we have to try to find the balance. You know, we heard that we want more. We have that. Now we're hearing it's a lot to manage, and so we're trying to balance that, whether we balance it globally. And after 4 days, I'm not looking to change anything systematically because it's been 4 days and it's been the first week of school. But there's things that families continue to work with your teachers and your principals to see if there's things that are unique to your situation that we can work through. So one of the things that we also have a part is we have small group enrichment and intervention offered. That's something that we didn't have in the past. But we have that now to help support students as they go throughout Remote Learning 2.0. And whether it's at the secondary level, but especially at the elementary level, every morning starts with an SEL check-in, building those relationships. That's the challenge we're having right now is in the spring, even though it was different, we had a relationship with those students. Starting up, even though our elementary teachers met with every student the week prior, there's still that relationship building piece, and that's in there. And getting feedback from our middle school and high school, they're showing that learning is occurring at the typical pace. I have received nothing but positive feedback from our middle school and high school parents that have decided to reach out. And then in terms of collaboration, there is collaboration time built in. One of the things that we have throughout the day and on Friday, even though there's live times that teachers will be with our students, there's that built-in collaboration time, and we've really seen our teachers, even more so than they typically do, work together, problem solve, take on leadership roles of, hey, I figured out this way to engage students, let's get together and I can help support you in this work. And then there's been, whether internal or external, I think we've had a lot of good communication that has happened to keep folks in the loop and on board with what's coming, and how we can problem solve. And with that, we need to look at what areas are we focusing on as a district after we're through 2 weeks of remote learning. There's been technology issues, not major issues. As Dave said the other day, we didn't break the internet, right? There was concerns that everybody streaming would have issues, but we've been able to problem solve those. I mean, some of those are very minor issues of, I had my computer muted, and it needed to be unmuted so I could hear the other kids or whatever it may be. But Dave and our tech coaches and teacher leaders have been working to problem solve some of those issues to enhance the experience. One of the things that we've got to continue to work on is how are we going to deliver instruction in an online environment and balance what is too much versus what is rigorous enough in our lesson plans to align with the standards that we have to teach. So I was over at Muraski today talking to our teachers and talking to one of our primary teachers, and her feedback to me was, we've started slow. We've slowed down the pace because we've got to get our youngest learners used to this environment, and so that's the balance that they're working through. And as that goes in with the next bullet point of workload. One of the things that was interesting, one of the feedback points we got before we implemented Remote 2.0 is, why are we not having live instruction on Friday like Monday through Thursday? One of the things I'm hearing now is, thank goodness we do not have live instruction on Friday because we can catch up, we can catch our breath, we can do the asynchronous work, things of that nature. And so when we talk about workload, and I'm just going to go off of the slides here for a little bit, we have to take attendance, right? This is by law, we have to take attendance. And what we've shared in previous board meetings is from pre-K to 12, we take attendance by students logging in live to their online sessions. If they can't be there for whatever reason, they're marked absent. But then if they turn in the work related to that class, it's transitioned to a present. So if parents, we got a lot of feedback at the secondary level. We met earlier this week with our administrators. If you see an absence, don't be greatly concerned at this point. We have systems in place. If your child misses class for so many days in a row or so many periods in a row, we're going to call you. But there may be a valid reason. Maybe you are feeling like there's a lot going on and I just need to work on this work asynchronously on a weekend or another time. Please do that. Talk with your teacher. Talk with the principal. You may see an absence request, but the system that we have in place is on Tuesday, we will finalize all attendance for the previous week. So a lot of work at the elementary level. I know it's due on Mondays. They'll go through all of that work. So please don't get nervous if you see absences. By the following Tuesday, we will go through all of that. And if you are feeling overwhelmed and you are feeling like it's a lot, reach out to your child's teacher, reach out to your child's principal, and they can problem solve with you. And one of the easiest ways to problem solve is say, don't log on to the class at this day, get the work, watch the recorded lesson, and then do it at a different time that may work for the workload for you. Again, we're going back on the slides. We're working on time for teachers to look at additional student engagement strategies. So we gave a ton of professional development to our teachers, and we've worked with our administrators, and we've got a plan to continue that because they've got a lot of tools in the toolbox, but they need the time to implement some of those to be more engaging. So it's not just all direct instruction. There's a lot of great tools that can help our kids be engaged. And as we talked about, one of the things that, and I shared this with the board earlier, the positive feedback that we've gotten across the district has been, the structure, the product, the preparation, the work that the teachers are doing. The concerns are that I want my kids in school, which I understand and we all agree with, and that was my response to Jess earlier today. And then, you know, it's a lot for our youngest learners. We completely understand that. And it's a lot for families that have a lot of kids managing the different platforms. And so we are working to see how can we better support our youngest students that are going through this, because it is a challenge. And then we're still working through solo program implementation. So as we've said, we're a week ahead of schedule. All of the students for the solo program have gotten their login information. We're still working through some nuances with that. But you know, we're still working through the program implementation, but everybody is online and ready to go. So that's kind of a successes we've seen in the first few weeks and the areas that we're going to continue to focus on. Any comments, questions, or feedback before I move on? So the other thing that we looked at in Remote Learning 2.0 is we had surveyed our families in the summertime about connectivity, internet access, you know, strength of Wi-Fi access or internet access in the home. And we had very minimal concerns that came back in terms of the Wi-Fi. But they're just released. It was a very quick turnaround, and I appreciate Dave Binkley's work in his department. You know, a few weeks ago, they said, hey, we've got this Broadband Ohio connectivity grant. There's X amount of dollars up for grabs. I think they gave us 2 weeks to get everything in, and we did. And so we put in a grant for $35,000. You know, they gave us 60% of that, which I think was kind of the norm. George, any insights? I know you were on all the calls with them in terms of the amount that they gave.
Correct. We gave, so if someone applied for 20,000, they got up to 20,000. Then anything above 20,000 that was applied for, they got 60%, as long as with the floor at 20,000. So we applied for 35,000, and we got 60% of that, which is 21,000. It wasn't an even 35,000. No, it wasn't even 35,000, but we got 21,000 some change.
Like $200 or something
Yeah.
like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use those dollars to help our infrastructure, as well as create a Mustang mobile Wi-Fi network. So right now we have external Wi-Fi access points at the middle school and high school. So when we say it's going to be at all the buildings, it's because it already exists there. So if you're a student and you go to the parking lot at the middle school or high school, you can log on to our network. But we wanted to add that to our elementary buildings. So we've purchased, with the grant dollars, we will purchase 10 Wi-Fi access points, 2 per building. They will be installed, and so that will mean all buildings, excluding the preschool, will have Wi-Fi access in the parking lot. So if a family does not have a reliable internet service at their home, they can come up to any of our buildings. They can come into the parking lot, whether it's a nice day and they want to sit on the playground or bring a chair, or whether they just want to come in their vehicle and hang out if it's not that nice of a day. But it gives people an option to be outside of the buildings when the buildings are closed for students to get internet access. And for all of this, we wanted to look at, when Remote Learning 2.0 is over, how can will this be utilized in an effective manner? Obviously, we have a lot of teachers and work that happens outside of the building. This will give access outside of the buildings as well. So we're excited to add that in terms of Wi-Fi access outside of the building. The other thing we wanted to do was create more of a mobile Wi-Fi access or cellular hotspots around the district. And so this is where, because we didn't get the $35,000, we will either do one or two things. It was planned to be on 5 buses. So on 5 buses, we would install 2 cellular Wi-Fi access points. We could take those 5 buses and park them anywhere in the city we would want to. We could tell people where they were, and they would just need to go to that location. And same kind of concept, they just need to be in the vicinity. They can get on the Strongsville network and utilize our internet services. Dave and I haven't had a chance to talk because all of the grant awardants just came out in the last couple days. So either we will reduce that number and put it on 2 or 3 buses instead of 5, or the tech budget would make up the difference, and we would do that for 5 buses. And then again, when Remote Learning 2.0 or blended learning is over, we could use these on special events or trips. So if we've got kids going to the DECA competition or sports competitions, we can make sure they take the bus with the Wi-Fi access points. That way they can use that for schoolwork. We'll say, in my mind, that's what they're working on, right, as they're going to their matches across the state. So again, something else that we could utilize, we can actually take them out of the buses, we can utilize them if we have large events or things of that nature. Laura, as I look at you, if we have a cross-country event that the Wi-Fi wouldn't access there, we can use that and put that there to have service over there. The other thing that we're doing, and this is something that's not a part of the grant, but just some things that we've done internally to research, is we have finalized options to purchase cellular hotspots. So all of the free options or the very reduced options that some of the service plans were providing are not there anymore. Right now, with the company that we're working with, it would be $85 to purchase the equipment or have the device, have the hotspot, and then $20 a month for the service. And so we would have to have a 2-year contract with those. So we do have some families that have reached out, and Dave has created a kind of flow chart for how this will work. So our first priority will be our students that are receiving free lunch services. So those students, if there is a need and they don't have reliable internet at home, they would contact the district. We would verify that they qualify for a free lunch. They would get a hotspot free of charge for as long as we're in remote learning. And just so everybody's aware, we are able, since they are our hotspots, we are able to put restrictions on them. So what that means is we would shut off the hotspot from being utilized from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. We could set curfews, so to speak. We could also set what they would be able to stream. So they couldn't be used for streaming Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever it may be. And because there are devices, we get a detailed report of all the sites that they are being utilized for, and they would have the security features that would be commensurate. So there would be some security into that. The next layer we would look at is for our students that are on a reduced lunch plan, that they would pay a small amount for a daily rate, but a maximum of $5 a month to have that device. And then after that, if we have families that do not qualify for free and reduced lunches, but for whatever reason would need a hotspot, as long as we have availability, we would allow them to have the hotspot, but would require them to pay the monthly service fee, which is $20. So they wouldn't have to go add a device to their plan. They could just come to us, and then for $20 a month, they could have the hotspot. So probably in the next couple weeks, you think, Dave? I don't know how long we get the devices, but we've got the plan. Just probably in the next few weeks, we'll have those available. We've already communicated with our principals to please let us know families that have reached out to you that are having difficulty. We'll start there and then move on forward and help out those families that are in need.
Cameron, as a request, if we can just think through the process, I would be interested to see how many families are interested in this, because I think the idea of a hotspot in a home is more useful if we have limited resources than expecting families to park in the elementary school. And so if we have limited dollars, I would consider problem solving and say, do we need to divvy this up a different way and prioritize those home hotspots? The thought, and I haven't thought through it deeply, but the thought of driving to the parking lot and parking there for a long period of time works in a pinch, works for a short period of time, but I don't think it's a long-term solution. Whereas a mobile hotspot in the home is a long-term solution.
We're not able to use these grant dollars because we didn't apply for it, but we are able to use our CARES Act funding.
Okay.
And that's what the hotspots would be purchased through, is our CARES Act funding to provide that support.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So what I want to talk about now is moving on from Remote 2.0 is to talk about where we're at with COVID and a recommendation on returning to in-person or blended learning and getting students back into school. So if we remember, the reason we are in remote learning is because the Board of Health shared concerns about prevalence and spread and felt that when schools would reopen, we would see a large spike and there'd be a large spread. And they said that they wanted to see stability in the metrics that they were using. And so as I shared in my parent communication on Monday last week, that we would be looking to implement our responsible restart plan. So what I mean by this is we've acknowledged and followed the Board of Health recommendation. We're following the metrics that they are using as a part of their recommendation. But if the Board of Health wants to continue to take a very precautionary approach, and the data says that we have sustainable improvement in COVID metrics, then we would move from the Board of Health recommendation and we would implement our responsible restart plan, which means we would use our color-coded graphics to determine how we would operate and what learning framework we would operate in. So that's what I'm talking about now. I'm talking about what are the points in time where we would move from the Board of Health recommendation and say we are going to utilize the metrics for a Strongsville City Schools plan to determine how we will operate our schools. And so we will continue to use the metrics that the Board of Health is recommending, and we will look to have 4 weeks of sustained improvement in 3 of the 4 areas that they mentioned. Decline in cases over a month period, positivity rates below 5%, and sustained improvement in the COVID risk level, such as orange. There is a 4th criteria which talks about availability of testing. That's difficult to measure, right, as a school district. However, one of the things on their call with the superintendents last Friday, there has been an improvement in the area. As of this week, Cleveland Clinic has shared that they will test any age of symptomatic individuals, and Metro will test anybody 10 on up that are showing symptoms. So we're starting to see a move in the right direction for testing children and the capacity for testing for all ages if you are symptomatic. So one of the things that I've done is I've taken all of this and just instead of talking about it, we've created this and put it into kind of a graphic that or a table that we'll track. Like always, I'll share this presentation with all of our community tomorrow. This is linked to the picture here, so you can get to this sheet and everybody could see it. So what we've done is we've kind of gone through the data. If you want to see our graphics for how we'll operate, they're in the same spot. So I'm just going to go through the first measure. So the first measure is decline in cases over a 1-month period. And you could see we started looking at this in July 17th. And this data comes out from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health every Friday. So even though these are not Fridays, or maybe these are Fridays, I use the Fridays instead of the Thursdays. So you could see every week we have seen a decline in cases. So this is not something from the state. This is something that just a color-coded, formatting of the slides. This tells me that we're 5+ weeks we've hit that indicator for decline in cases over a month. So green means good, and we are in a good spot. So looking at the positivity rates, they are saying they want to see it below 5%. We've seen data for 2 weeks in a row below 5%. We were at 4% and 4.3. Again, we will see what this is tomorrow. So we're at week 2, and I've just got it red, orange, yellow, green, color-coded. So we've had 2 weeks that we've been hitting that metric. On every Thursday, the governor updates the statewide charts. So sustained improvement, orange. And you can see from the time they implemented the statewide rating system, we are now, as of today, we've been in orange for 3 weeks. And so that, in 3 weeks, we're in yellow. We get to that 4th week, we get to a lovely shade of light green. And then increased capacity testing for children. Again, this is difficult for us to measure, but based anecdotally on the Board of Health's communications, we've hit this for week 1. And then I've just added, because a part of our plan is looking at, in certain areas, looking at our neighboring counties. We could see, we're not looking at that for sustained improvement for them, just kind of as a benchmark point. But as you can see, as of this week, Lorain County moved from red to yellow, and Medina County stayed at orange. So when we take a look at, we want to see, 4 weeks of sustained improvement. That means that we are 2 weeks away from getting to the point where we could see all 3 of these metrics in the green. Now, what I also want to say, this is a question I get a lot, is, okay, Cameron, what if one of those weeks goes up? What does that mean to our decision process? And here's my rationale. My rationale is the Board of Health said they wanted to see sustained improvement. And if we're in red and we pop to orange for 1 week and we go back to red, that doesn't mean we're good. So if they are going to use that logic, my belief is the opposite logic applies. That if we are orange and good for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we pop to red for 1 week, but then we go back down to orange, that to me does not mean we start over. We need to look at trend data. And so if the trend is we are trending in the right direction in positive data, then that's what we would look at. If it's just a one isolated week where we see a spike, but then we go back down, to me, that's not a trend. So just to give you some kind of my thought process towards that. So with this data, we are 2 weeks away from getting all the metrics to where we need to be. Yes.
Is that the far side there, the 28th?
So we do have a couple
Okay.
from, for this week, and then we'll add the rest
Oh,
of it.
September 4th, we already have the orange. Okay.
Yeah, so tomorrow, the Board of Health around 2 PM releases their data for the county. And so the metrics that are not there, we will see tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah. So again, as a reminder, moving from the Board of Health recommendation, once we hit those baseline datas in a couple weeks, we would follow our responsible restart plan, which is if we're in orange or yellow, that would be in-person, in-building learning. If we're in purple, it would be remote learning. And if Strongsville is in red, we would look at our surrounding communities to see how we would operate. So we've talked about this at length. It's there as a reference. But if we were in red, let's say, for example, we go to red, based on current data, we would follow delivery option 1 because we've got one county in orange, the other county in yellow, and that would mean elementary and preschool would come back 5 days a week for in-person learning every day, and the middle school and high school would be in blended learning. Okay? So here's what I'm recommending based on how data is trending about how we would, the timeline that we would follow to implement our responsible restart plan and open the schools. So saying that we need 2 more weeks of positive data, tomorrow is one of those weeks. September 11th would be the final week. So if data continues to trend in that way, by September 11th, we would get 4 weeks of positive data within the metrics. We said we would give families a 1-week notice. So on September 14th, we would share with our families that students will return. We're giving you 1-week notice that students would return on September 21st. On September 21st, if you remember from our original restart plan, we had a 2-week phase-in period. Because we've been in remote, we believe we can reduce that to a 1-week phase-in period. And if you're thinking, why do we need a phase-in period? It's about all the building management issues. How do we enter and exit the school? How do we get on and off the bus? How do I get my lunch? How do I move in the building? How do I switch classes? There is an inordinate amount of procedural items that we need to train kids to understand and to follow. And if you think of just the logistics, if I can do that with 12 to 15 kids in my classroom, it's a lot easier than 25 to 30. If I have to feed lunch to 1,300 kids at the middle school versus 650 kids, we can work out the kinks, we can manage those things and problem solve quicker on a much smaller scale. And so that would be the first week. Preschool and half-day kindergarten would still go to school daily. The reason being is they're half-time. That would equal kind of the experience the rest of the kids get. That would be in full-day kindergarten through 12th grade. And they would be in a blended schedule, and the blended schedule would be communicated by your building principals. One of the things, the reason I can't give specifics right now is the buildings are still finalizing what they want to do with an orientation day for our students that are new to the building. So in the original plan, the first day on Monday would have just been for full-day kindergarten students, 6th graders, and 9th graders. They're still debating whether that should still happen. But it would be a blended learning schedule. Parents should already know if their students on a green day schedule or a white day schedule, and we'll share what that will look like here shortly. But principals will share that schedule for that phase-in week for September 21st. On the week of September 28th then, we would start to transition all students back to school. So for that week, preschool to second grade students would attend daily. And then for students in grades 3 to 12, they may attend daily, they may follow the blended learning framework based on available data. So if you remember, if we bump to red, if the county bumps to red the week of September 28th, we may consider that we would implement the red schedule, which could divvy up blended and every day. But we do know that no matter whether we're in orange or red, preschool to second grade would attend daily. 3 on 12, we will see based on the data, and that we will communicate that. We will give families a 1-week notice, so we will communicate that to families no later than September 21st. And as our students, our families know that have students with disabilities, they have remote learning plans, and some of those remote learning plans dictate the frequency which with they're coming to school now and to get services. And so if we are blended, the remote learning plan would still prevail in terms of the frequency which our students would attend school. I did want to share, again, this will be linked to the slides. It will be sent out in the communications. But we do have a blended learning calendar that is available. So you can see that every Monday and Wednesday is a green day. Every Tuesday and Thursday is a white day. I've shaded them gray, so just they're a little visible. And what I've done is when there are days off, we've added that day that was off onto a Friday. So all students will get the same number of days. And this is just a schedule so parents know and can plan, and they can see it visually. And if we ever have to implement blended learning, we don't have to guess and create. We can say, look at the calendar, whatever days we're going to go to blended is the schedule that you will follow. So as you can see, for planning purposes, on the week of September 21st, which would be that first phase-in week, students in the white day groups would attend Tuesday and Thursday. The green day groups would attend Wednesday and Friday, no matter what. We're still determining what Monday will be. Okay, so we'll clarify that. So that will be sent out with parents so they have the schedule as well.
Cameron, so if today were September 28th, just for clarity on that, everybody would be back in school 5 days a week, preschool through 12,
Correct.
based on what we have right now, trends go down, and based on this plan.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. So very well stated. Today's September 28th. Everybody's in school pre-K to 12.
So the way we're reading this is that level 2 matters only when there are 4 consecutive weeks of level 2.
Say that again for me.
So that level 2 says in building in person. We've
Yeah.
been in level 2 for 3 weeks. So that only comes into play when we're in week 4 and beyond.
Yeah, when we officially say, what I'm saying is if we have positive data through September 11th, we're moving from the Board of Health recommendation, and we're going to move to our metrics for our responsible restart. So once we get to that point, and the other thing that I want to be clear is that if we have a spike, let's see next week, one data point goes up. I'm not saying we're not going to move to this plan, because right now the trend data says that we're trending in a good spot. So unless, we always have to put that little asterisk, unless something unforeseen happens, I'm recommending that we move to this as of September 14th. I'm somewhat confident that the Board of Health data will be positive tomorrow. And so I think we're going to have 3 weeks of data that's there. I think that's showing a significant trend. So unless we go to purple before we get to September 28th, which purple would say we go to remote, right? That we're going to implement these graphics and move from the Board of Health recommendation. So just for clarity, I'm going to say it one more time. Families need to prepare that on September 14th, I'm going to communicate with you and give you a 1-week notice. And September 21st, we're going to move to our in-person and building plan and move to our decisions based on our color-coded system.
Cameron, I just wanted to piggyback off of your, the comment of moving away from the County Board of Health's recommendation. And I think it's a little more, there's more depth to it than simply saying we're moving away from their recommendation. We're still listening to them. We're still partnering with them. We're still working with them. For me, speaking for myself, what we're doing is saying that their communication is from their lens, and their lens is a public health lens. All of the metrics they talk about are public health metrics. And that's their purview, and that's their responsibility, so I understand their recommendation. However, the school board's purview, the administration's purview, the district's purview is to be aware of that, but we have other factors that we need to measure. And so it's not that we're disregarding or moving away, we're simply saying that we heard it, and we now need to exercise our own judgment for what's the best decision moving forward for Strongsville. When they, and we all discussed this prior, when they first came out with their recommendations, it was a mandate. And then a week later, they adjusted it and said it's more of a recommendation. It's more of this is our professional opinion, et cetera. So the same way they're changing, we're just adjusting also. And I think it's a reasonable plan. I follow the data daily. The state of Ohio delivers it at 2 p.m. every day, and I'm on it every day at 2 p.m. trying to figure out as much as we can based on the data available. Most of us have seen that there was a large spike on Tuesday. It seemed to come down a little bit on Wednesday, but candidly speaking, I think we're all waiting to see what's going to happen on Labor Day and how Strongsville is going to respond to Labor Day and what that effect is and how the entire county is. But I just wanted to make sure that it's, there's a lot of games of gotcha going on. And when we say we're moving away from the recommendation, we're still understanding the recommendation. We're choosing to implement the plan that, quite frankly, was the plan that we were going to do before the Cuyahoga County Board of Health brought out their information. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
And just adding to that, and I said this at a couple meetings ago, we all need to do our part. We all want our kids back in school, and that means we have to make personal sacrifices outside of school to make sure that our kids can have a season, our kids can come to school. Every positive COVID case we've had in the district has not come from the school. It's come from outside of the school. And we haven't even had spread in the school once it's gotten here. And so as we take a look at the frequency with which we're seeing positive cases, which right now is manageable, but if we all want our students in school, we all want our seasons to continue, then we all need to share the commitment that we may not go to the Labor Day picnic. We may not hang out with a group of people and not wear masks that are not in our quarantine group, because we can't have both sides of the coin. We can't live life like we always have and do the things we've always wanted to do and to expect it's not going to have an impact on what we all want, which is getting our kids back in school and making sure that our athletes continue to have a season, our marching band continues to have their performances. And so I appreciate, what our community has done, but it's, as you talk to the Board of Health, their big concern is we are going to see the data from Labor Day, from colleges, from schools coming back, probably right before we come, right around the 17th or 18th. Those data points are going to reflect people that, contracted COVID in the next couple of days. So let's all continue to do our part. Social distance, wash our hands, wear masks, and we can make sure that we can continue to operate. There's always going to be risk, but we can mitigate a lot of that risk by doing our part. I'm going to move on now to how this impacts Solo and how this impacts transportation, two things that are changes. So, but before I do that, are there any other questions or feedback on the timeline?
So you and I have discussed the timeline quite a bit, and we challenged, can we come back a week earlier? And I respect and understand the workload that we have to front load and be prepared. And so I simply asked if we need that week to be better prepared so that when we do come back, it is better, then we can be patient and wait another week. The one thing I do want to have that discussion on is I think it's reasonable to break it up that high school and middle school, this is their second week, and whether we want to argue whether it's successful or what, it has been better. It has been more manageable. But I also think that's a level of high school and middle school and the maturity of the students. Elementary, I think we need to take a different lens at. So whether we problem solve or however we want to phrase that, but I think we want to have some discussion of how should parents determine when things are untenable. And some of it I'm piggybacking off of Mrs. Koza's comments, et cetera, but I do, this has only been the first week for elementary, and the challenges are different. Speaking for myself, my freshman, I make sure he's awake, I make sure he's in front of the computer, and then I don't worry about it, and I follow up with him at the end of the day. I can only imagine what it would have been like when my oldest was in the 6th grade and my youngest was in kindergarten. How should parents respond, Cameron?
So I think, first of all, we have to understand and set clear expectations for what this experience is going to be. So, one of the things our parents have not had the joy of experiencing is the first week of school, in school. And so understanding that that is a transition week, that's a challenging week. So for us in school, the challenges that we're seeing with the first week are probably a little more heightened than usual because of the online component, but it is a transition, also considering the fact that students have been without a structured school experience for 6 months. So I think as a family, we have to set expectations of what this first week will look like. And I think we also have to be understanding that based on the age, the skill set, the needs, the social, emotional needs of my kids, there's going to be a different level of support that may be needed. So as Rich, as you shared, you wake up your son, he gets up, he does his thing. I have families that have emailed me, and they have first graders that this is the greatest thing ever, things are working well, my kid's engaged. I also have families that are saying this is so difficult to manage with younger students. But understand that we appreciate and value everything our parents are doing. But for our youngest learners, this is not going to be something, especially in these beginning weeks, that they're going to be independent learners on. And I can only empathize with, how do you do that when I talked to a father today that has a preschool, kindergartner, and first grader, right? I mean, it's an insurmountable challenge, and I understand that. But what we don't want to have happen is with getting our mindset in a setting that here's what the events that I'm going to face. I'm going to face, based on how I know my kids, a rockiness in the transition, probably difficulty to engage. The workload may be a little much right now, but you need to reach out to your teacher and your principal. You need to communicate with us. We are working internally, and we talked about the areas of focus. Tomorrow, the principals, all of the elementary principals meet with all of the teachers. So how we structure it is we have a principal that oversees all of first grade. So they're going to problem solve, they're going to talk, they're going to ebb and flow for next week based on some of the feedback that they've received. If the only way parents are sharing their feedback is through Facebook feeds, that's not going to be helpful. So parents need to communicate with us. We're not going to problem solve if we don't know what the problems are. So reach out to the teacher, reach out to the principal, and they will be able to navigate individual circumstances for families that need it. So if a family says, hey, here's the situation I'm having, the experience my kids are having, there are things that gives us themes to work on to say, hey, globally, here's some things we need to shift on. Here's some things that we're seeing are too much, or too little, whatever it may be. Or here's some things we can individually problem solve with families. Like I said earlier in my introductory comments, the easiest thing to problem solve, and all you have to do is communicate with us and let us know, is that, hey, it's a long day for my kids and they need a break. You know, logging on every 60 minutes with a few minutes break is a lot. We've given the option to say, we want you there live, like, right, we got to account for your attendance, but there's that asynchronous option. You know, watch the video, complete the work, see the teacher, go to the help sessions if you need it. So if you look at your child's schedule and you say, hey, there's 3 instructional blocks plus the encore, so that's 4 instructional blocks, so 3 hours and 45 minutes a day, up to that students need to be online plus the half hour, so I take that back, 4 hours and 15 minutes at the elementary level, plus the SEL block in the morning. If that's too much for you, work with your child's teacher and principal. And they could say, hey, here's an option that we can work through. As we look at the plan, we have to look at, there's 7 days. 7 days of live instruction, 3 days next week, 4 days the following week, that we need to work through. So because of the great variance that we're seeing in the feedback from people at different grade levels or different experiences, you know, it's hard right now to make global changes, especially on 4 days of data. So that's what I would suggest, Mr. Micko.
Good. I mean, I teed it off. You know, ultimately, what I hope parents understand is that it is okay to say, I need a break. Yeah. And it's okay to say, my child needs a break. And I think it's also important to recognize when you're that mom or that dad who is corralling 3 children going in 3 separate directions, it's okay for the parent to say, I need a break. And the message that I want to make sure is loud and clear is communicate with your teacher. And, you know, I think we're all programmed, our children are all programmed to want to do their best. And that idea of saying, you know what, this is too much, I need a break, is foreign. And I think the reason we have children by and far that are like that is because they get it from their parents. They don't want to say, I need a break. They don't want to say, you know, education's important, we're going to be there. This is the first time we've done this, and it is okay to say, you know what, Thursday was a really awful day, I'm taking a break, and we'll start again on Friday or Monday or whatever it is, and it's okay to do that. And, you know, you said it much nicer than I did.
Well, and
but
I think
I think it's important
Yeah.
that it's okay to say, this is a lot, and I'm going to try again tomorrow, and it's not a failure, it's simply saying, it's time for a break.
It is, and I just want to clarify, if you're looking at the 5 times a day that you have to get online as an elementary student, if you decide to not have your child online for one of those blocks or here or there, there's nothing you need to do. What I mean by when you need to call the principal and the teacher is if you're saying, I don't want my child to participate in the specials online block anymore. If you're not going to be there every day, then we need to have a reason. But if it's just, hey, Thursday was a bad day, we're going to take off the last block and we're going to do the asynchronous work, you don't need to call or tell us. You'll be marked absent in the system, but when you hand in the work by Monday, that absence will be changed to a present and we will move forward. Yeah.
I just wanted to speak for a minute because there's a lot of parents that are sitting where I'm sitting with 3 kids in elementary school, and this was hard. I heard one mom this week say that next to childbirth, this was the hardest thing she'd ever done. And I don't know where I fit in on that, but I thought it was a really interesting comment. It's hard, and I think unless they're doing it every single day with the child with special needs or multiple children or with maybe your toddler at home or in daycare or with 2 parents working or unstable learning environments where one day you're with this family, one day you're with this family, parents with mental health concerns. So like, what I'm thinking is I'm fearful that we're underestimating the number of elementary parents for whom this is like crazy difficult. And you're gonna have those, like, a lot of those parents aren't gonna reach out. They never are. They're just gonna stop doing it. They're gonna stop participating. They're gonna get frustrated and throw in the towel. They're gonna be posting crazy things on Facebook because they have to vet somewhere. So I guess what I'm asking is, one, if you're a parent out there and you're struggling, call your principal. I did it today myself. I talked to my principal. It helped. I don't know, I haven't been able to implement what she said yet, but I'm gonna try on Monday. So call your principal. And that will also help us judge how widespread this concern is. And the other thing I challenge this group is, I think it's more widespread than we're willing to admit. And I think we have to start now saying, what are we going to do if this is long-term? I don't want it to be. I can't do it long-term. But if it's gonna be, if we're gonna be in for 2 weeks, out for 2 weeks, Christmas comes, we're out, if we're gonna be doing that, I think we have to seriously start considering what kind of structure will work for all elementary families. And I've heard the same thing that Rich has said, and I talked to Laura. Middle school and elementary, and high school, sustainable, perhaps. Not ideal, but they can do it. My 5th grader, he does okay, thank goodness. But the elementary students is too much computers, too much screen time, too much, I have all boys, and sometimes that factors into things. They're jumping on the bed while the teacher's trying to teach, and if I, help this one, what happens to the one over here? So I just want those people out there to know that I'm sitting here and I'm one of you, I'm doing it. It's hard, and we can do it together, but we need to hear from you. We need to know what your experience is, because we can't just go on the, I see 2 moms here tonight who I know are nodding. I know their experiences like mine because they're on Facebook with me. We need to know if you're in another situation that's causing distress to your family, so that we can kind of look at the elementary situation. Thank you.
So moving on to solo, I wanted to talk about how the return to school pairs with solo. So as you know, we had a significant number of families, not go to solo because we started in remote learning. And so what we said is, at a time when the district would return to in-person instruction, we would allow an additional opportunity for families to enroll in the solo program. So this is for families that would want to do that. So tomorrow, when I communicate with the parents, a survey will be sent out to all families providing that option to enroll in the solo program. It will close at 4 p.m. on Friday, September 11th. Again, if you are a family that's already in the solo program, you don't complete the survey. If you're a family that's in remote 2.0, but you want your kids to come back to school, whether it's blended or in person, you want to stay in that in-person cycle, you don't complete this survey. This is only for the families that are in remote 2.0, only for the reason because kids are not coming to school. And if kids are going to come to school, that's no longer an option for them for a variety of reasons. So we asked them to complete the survey. The one thing that I want to be clear upon is, again, expectations for solo. Solo is a standalone online education system, and you get a teacher advocate, which means a teacher is going to check in with your child, answer any questions, problem solve, grade their work, provide support where necessary. They are not providing instruction. Instruction comes through the software that's being provided. So if the expectation is my child, it's going to be like remote learning, there's going to be a teacher engaging with my child, somebody teaching them, that is not the solo program. And so that's something that please make sure you're clear. It's been a very challenging experience for the solo program, for the number of families that have opted in, then decided they wanted to go back. And all of those changes put a tremendous amount of work, which we're more than willing to do for our kids and for our families. But every change is 3 or 4 people in the district that have to make multiple changes. So we ask that you please consider this, think about it, think about your kids, think about whether that structure works for your child and for you as a family before you commit, because we want to make sure that our kids are in the right system and that don't keep bouncing back and forth. So in terms of the timeline, the survey will be completed by September 11th. And pairing this with our return to school plan, that I just presented. For the week of September 14th, students would remain in the Remote Learning 2.0 schedule. They would follow that schedule because all kids will still be in Remote Learning 2.0 for the week of September 14th. For the week of September 21st, this would be the phase-in week. Our students in the solo program, they would continue to complete the asynchronous work for that week. There'll be work posted in the Google Classroom, but they won't come to school. Obviously, the reason parents are enrolling in solo is they don't want their children in school with large numbers of students. So they would complete the asynchronous work, but they would not attend in-person learning. And again, if for some reason things go bad and we have to stay in Remote 2.0, then the kids would stay in that and follow that current schedule until we move. On the week of September 28th, this is where students would transition to the solo program. Just like everybody else would come back in some framework as we discussed earlier on the week of the 28th. The students would start solo at that time, and just a couple kind of housekeeping questions that we get. They will start at a similar place as they would as they're leaving Remote 2.0. For some of our secondary platforms, they'll actually do a formative assessment for the class, and they will place you where your learning is at, not just on day one. As well as the other ones, it will place you where you're at in the curriculum versus starting from scratch. So that is a key point to know. Also, grades that students earned in Remote 2.0 will transfer to solo. So those grades will be combined together. So again, just an FYI, so we're aware of that. And once you are enrolled, you are in there for the entire first semester. That first semester goes to December 18th. And at the end of that first semester or close to that point, you'll be given the option either do you want to continue for the second semester or do you want to return to in-person learning. So those are just some, kind of common, frequently asked questions in terms of the solo program. Any questions from the board on how this plan would pair with solo?
I don't think so. I think it goes without saying that transition, there's probably going to be some clunkiness to it, and hopefully it's a theme. In this case, reach out to your student advocate. Is that what we're calling them? Reach out to your student advocate and we'll work through whatever issues you're experiencing.
The last thing that I wanted to share with the board in terms of my update for this meeting is transportation. So again, on September 21st, we'll start in-person schooling. That means that transportation will start up. As we've talked about, we will socially distance as far as we possibly can, but all students will be required to wear masks, and they will sit at maximum 2 students per seat. Please know, too, based on the mask order that the governor signed, that if you're waiting for the school bus in the morning and you're not able to maintain a 6 feet social distance, you should wear your mask as you wait for the school bus. I think it's extremely difficult for our students to maintain a 6 feet social distance, so as a parent, I would highly encourage your child to wear a mask as they're waiting for the bus. If students fail to have a mask, they will be provided prior to getting on the bus with a mask. Jenny has worked with our principals this week in terms of code of conduct and how that applies to all the rules that we have and restrictions for COVID, and so principals will be communicating our plan to support our students in making the right choices and wearing their masks and keeping them on and as we go through. So just as a follow-up from what I shared at the last meeting, excluding Chapman Elementary School, all students that live 1 or more mile from the school and are not residing on a non-busing street will be provided with transportation. So there's nothing you need to do. There's no other survey you need to do. We're good to go. You will get busing as you normally do. And again, when I send this out tomorrow, if you're not sure what the non-busing streets are, they're linked there and divided by building. For Chapman Elementary School, they will, because of the routing available there and the kids that are eligible, the students that opted in will receive transportation services. So of the students that opted in and available seating on the bus, we're good. And so they're working through Chapman right now. So if you are a Chapman family and you are not sure if you opted in or you didn't and you need transportation, please reach out to the transportation department. Curtis Washington or Lori Sinek, either of those folks would be able to help you with your request. And we just need to manage Chapman and make sure we have enough room for all of the kids that are eligible. In terms of bus stops and pickup times, those will be made public on September 14th, so you'll get as typical, a 1-week notice as to where that stop will be and at what time. And as always, families log on to your PowerSchool Unified Classroom account. That's where you'll be able to find that information, just as you would find it any other year. And then, as you know, we have a GPS system that we implemented in our buses last year. There was also a parent app feature to that. And so in the month of September, we will be beta testing the parent app with some select routes and parents. And then it will be live for all families no later than October 5th. So you will download the app, you'll get a secure logon, you'll be able to see your child's bus and where they're traveling in and about the city. So that will be what we're going to do is, if you see buses driving around the city, we already have buses out for parochial and community school routes, but what we are going to do to beta test, we are going to send our buses out and do practice runs to run the routes. And that will help us without students on the bus, but that will help us start to track the GPS data, making sure everything's communicating with one another. And then we'll be able, shortly of our kids getting on the buses, be able to roll that out to our families. And that ends my update for this meeting in terms of the restart plan, unless there's any additional feedback or questions.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions? No. I will share, and we've all been talking about this, as I'm sure the public has been talking about this, but we have I don't want it to be trite, but we do have a responsible restart plan. And I think we've communicated well where we're headed. I'm pleased that we've put in the right amount of preparation, et cetera. I think, I personally watch the governor just about every time. Everyone is concerned about Labor Day and what that'll bring. And I'm hopeful that it will be a non-event as far as the COVID is concerned for us in Strongsville, but we'll wait and see. But we'll get through that, we'll measure that, and as long as nothing goes off the rails, so to speak, I think we have a reasonable plan that balances protecting our students, protecting our teachers, our support staff, the adults, and protecting the larger community. I have my experience through work where we've been doing this, going to work as an essential industry and following those protections and following the washing of your hands and wearing the mask. And we have, we now have alcohol throughout the plant so that employees can use it when necessary. We've gone through the process of discovering someone was positive and doing that contact tracing and working through all of that, and we've been successful at it. And I think it's time for us to do that also for Strongsville. It was a conversation I had with Seth, and you don't want to say it this way, but you want to find out has someone else been successful? Have other schools done that? And there have been schools in Ohio and around the country that have come back. And we're all aware of the news stories of schools that have gone back and haven't been successful. But there are examples of schools in Ohio that have gone back to school and have been successful. Successful means it's been safe. It doesn't mean it's been perfect. Successful doesn't mean there hasn't been cases of infection. But when those cases occurred, similar to what we've been able to do with our athletics, we've been able to contact trace quickly, which is helpful. We've been able to quarantine where appropriate. And fortunately, we haven't had, what I would call the meat packing scenario, where people are in close proximity and everybody quickly becomes infected. So I think we have a good plan in place. I know I'm chomping at the bit. I know I think there's a lot of people doing that, but we're also going to do it reasonably and adjust if necessary, if the facts on the ground require us to act differently. But I wanted to thank Cameron for the work and the entire team for the work involved. You know, sometimes it feels like you're arguing, but ultimately we're trying to get to the right decision and get our students safely back in school. So I don't have any other personal comments. Did anyone else have any comments or questions?
I do have one question. What is going to be the protocol? Like, how do you find out a student has a case? Does the Cuyahoga County Board of Health contact the school, or are we relying on the parents to contact the school?
So Jenny has done a phenomenal job working through, taking the lead in everything in terms of symptoms, cases, contact tracing with some of our staff. So I'll let Jenny kind of share the process.
So just to answer your question, Sherry, I would say it could be both. We are going to be reliant on our parents to be honest and truthful. And if their child has the top 3 symptoms really are loss of taste and smell, fever, and any kind of respiratory cough. I mean, those are the top 3. But, always to be safe, the recommendation is to stay home, contact your primary care doctor or the Board of Health and get a solid recommendation from them. And if symptoms subside, if you wake up, a little congested and symptoms subside throughout the day, maybe with some allergy medicine and you're feeling fine the next day, you can come back to school. If, there's lots of cases where, I had a teacher that their child woke up with a fever, took them to the doctor, it turned out to be swimmer's ear. And so, okay, you can come back to work. It was not COVID. So I think everybody so far that I've worked with has been very, taken it very seriously, contacted their primary health provider and have provided documentation. So, that's another thing. It's easy to get the result. Sometimes if you're not getting that rapid test, which isn't very reliable, I wouldn't recommend that one. It does take a good 24 to even up to 72 hours to get the results. I think they're getting better at testing, so hopefully that improves. But just to provide that, again, it's a sense of security, safety. If a child would go home with symptoms, to come back to the classroom and go, what's going on? We all need to make sure that our teachers and all of our students in the building feel safe. And again, I can't stress enough the top 3 of wearing your mask, social distancing, and washing your hands regularly is going to make a huge impact. So a little bit of both. If the Board of Health gets a case and they've done some contact tracing, they will let us know as well if they have a case, and then we take it from there. They've been such great partners working with us, answering every question, very available. And so that's how we've been handling it so far.
Thank you.
And I think that brings up a good point. Within two weeks or whatever, we'll be communicating with our parents what that daily health assessment will entail, and that partnership or that expectation that our parents will do that. And I think as parents, we all kind of joke that prior to COVID, if your child, well, maybe you should stay home or maybe you should go to school, that era is over. The idea of saying to your child, well, go to school, and if you still don't feel better, I'll pick you up at lunch. Those have much larger, that kind of action has much larger consequences today. If your child is, doesn't pass that health check or that self-assessment, we're counting on you to say, I'm going to keep my child home for a day. And we'll use some common sense to determine, does that mean you have to go to the doctor? Does that mean a test's in order, et cetera? Jenny, and I think our sports example is a great example that we've done well, where we can use that common sense to figure out what our next steps are. But missteps or conscious disregard will be dangerous. And I mean dangerous in the sense of having our students safely back in school. I mean dangerous that people will get sick. More people than necessary will get sick. But we'll also, the piggyback of that is us as a district, us as teachers and as an organization, will understand that if you're at home, we're gonna work with you, and we're gonna, I think that era of, oh my gosh, I can't miss a day of school, what am I gonna miss? It's gonna be okay to miss that day of school, and we'll have those remote tools under our belt to make it easier to do. So I think it's important to say that that when we do come back to school, that daily self-assessment is important, and following it is important.
And Mr. Mecco, if I can just add one more thing. We finalized the employee protocols that we have flow charts of what you follow if you're feeling sick, if you feel like you've had direct contact with somebody. We have letters that we formally send out so that everybody knows what to do in the rules. We equally have done that for our students and our families. So those will be shared and come out, so parents will have something to kind of follow and understand what to do in those situations.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, you want to hit curriculum?
So under curriculum, we have one item, and as I've shared with the board, as you know, our Air Force Junior ROTC program was deactivated for low enrollment, but we did have students that are currently juniors and seniors that we wanted to look for options for them to finalize their work in that program. So Jenny worked with Midview Local School District, who has a Air Force Junior ROTC deployment. And they've agreed. It worked in the schedule of our students that are seniors. Not that we have one junior that it didn't work in, but they will be able to go there, complete the coursework. It happens that it's at the end of the school day for them, so they'll go. They'll be a part of their Air Force Junior ROTC unit and completely go through and have the full program completed. So we're excited to do that. So what we have for you is a MOU, or a memorandum of understanding, between our district and their district, detailing this relationship. So be resolved upon my recommendation that the Strongsville Board of Education enters into an agreement with Midview Local School District for Strongsville school students to participate in Midview's Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps program for the 2020-21 school year as found in Exhibit A.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I'm going to give it to Sherry by a hair. Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Buckner. Any discussion? I think it was a bummer for a lot of people that the program wasn't able to sustain itself, but I'm glad we were able to find a good conclusion for the seniors that invested quite a bit so far. Any other discussion? Mr. Anagnostou?
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Solis?
Yes.
Mr. Micco?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Cameron. Next on our agenda is board policies. We have third reading of a number of policies that are listed in the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Buckner. Any discussion? No?
Sorry.
Here's your chance. Okay. Well, I do have a couple of quick comments. Most of these policies bring them into compliance with state or federal law. A few that I wanted to highlight is PO Policy 8420.01, which is a new policy for us, which is pandemics and other medical emergencies. And I will highlight that the superintendent will establish a pandemic plan, and it will be reviewed annually. And Cameron has done a great job so far, and I'm sure we will continue to review it annually. And then Policy 6108 is authorization to make electronic funds, and 6107 is authorization to accept and distribute electronic records and electronic signatures. And the point that I want to make is, we're approving those abilities. And some might think that it's about time in the 21st century. What's important about the policies is that it establishes the controls. It specifically talks about making sure that whether it's electronic signatures or electronic transfers of money, that we have integrity and security in place. And I know George will do a great job following up on that. Any other discussion? George?
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Solis?
Yes.
Mr. Micco?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
The motion carries. Next is Board of Education Other. Does anybody have any Board of Education Others? Now, I have a couple. One, I noticed that Ohio State University released, I don't know how to pronounce it, Tibble the best damn band in the land, 141, which is a video about the Ohio State Marching Band. And I wanted to give a shout out to Miss Sydney Reich, who is a former graduate of Strongsville and is highlighted in that video quite a bit. So that's exciting for her and for us, so make sure to watch that. It's on the internet. And then September 15th, the Strongsville Athletic Boosters will be starting their car raffle, and I am obligated to let everyone know that that will start on September 15th. And that's all the others I have, unless anybody else has any others. Hearing none, we do have reason for executive session under the topics of.
To consider the employment of a public employee, to review negotiations with public employees concerning other terms and conditions of their employment, and to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations of state statutes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mrs. Buckner. Any discussion? Hearing none. George?
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Sully?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
And the motion carries, and we will go into executive session at 8:27. We have no expectation of further business. I want to wish everyone a very happy Labor Day, and I want to thank everyone in the school district, the administration, the parents, the teachers, the staff. We've all been working very hard, so enjoy your Labor Day, and we look forward to seeing everyone soon. Thank you very much.